Hey, everybody, welcome to the witching hour. Yes, that magical hour when the veil is thin and magic happens. I am so excited about the magic we have today because I'm falling backwards into my beloved grandfather's world. I heard about his book, I just had to have him on. He is an author, he is a philosophical counselor, he is an educator. Let me introduce you to the one and only, we'll get to know him together, Scott Gelfand. Welcome, Scott. Thank you so much for doing my show.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
I am excited. This is your brand new book, and I heard that you like bestseller for 2 weeks straight on your first
On
few reviews.
Amazon for philosophy books. Yep.
That is awesome. So, Thinking Ethically, a handbook for making moral choices, seems very timely to me in this current world we are living in 2025. So, what inspired you to write a book about? It's basically about how we think ethically rather than what to think.
That's crucial. Nowhere in the book do I ever tell people what to think. I think a little background will make it clear where I'm coming
Please.
from. In 2008, during the presidential election between, I think it was Obama and John McCain, I was watching this electoral map on TV, and it's like stark. There's all these red states, and then there's blue states on one side and blue states on the other, but it was so stark. And I thought to myself, I wonder how this affects people in terms of where they live. Imagine a blue Democrat living in a red state. How do they feel? How isolated do they feel? So I actually asked my wife, who's an artist, not professional, I said, could we make a little map of the states and put the percentage of blue dots for Democrats and red dots for Republicans? So, like Oklahoma, where I was living, was basically 60 blue dots and then 40 red dots. And then when you step back a little bit, just like I knew it would be, it was purple. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be better for discourse in the United States for us to actually have a purple map? And I said, I'm going to write a book called Red and Blue Make Purple. And the point of the book is to say you're not alone wherever you live. You may think, number one, you may think you're a Democrat in Oklahoma and be worried about sharing your viewpoints. On the other hand, you might be a Republican in Oklahoma and be thinking everybody else is a Republican. I can say what I want, not realizing that someone who's blue might not agree with you. So I decide I'm going to write this book. And literally a few days later, the articles in the paper, I don't know if you'll remember this, Patty, said we're living in a post-partisan America. Partisanship is over. This is 2008, 17 years ago, and they're
Wow.
telling us partisanship is over. And then I thought, a book. I'm going to write a book. If partisanship is over, what we need to do is learn to talk to each other about moral issues. And how am I going to do that? I'm going to try to show people how they think about moral issues. And crucially, I think it's obvious if you read the book or maybe through our conversation that we are not morally divided the way we think we are. In fact, we embrace a remarkably similar set of moral principles, those on the political left and right. So I thought this will be the book. It's the perfect time. I'll teach people how they think morally and maybe how they could do better. And that'll help them understand other people and realize that these other people aren't so different from them. Then I became chair of the department for 10 years. I was too busy, but I was always in the back of my mind. And I ended up talking to someone on the telephone for a reason that had nothing to do with this. And I said, I always had a dream of writing this book. And he said, I think I can help you get this book published. So I thought this was great. It was just synchronicity, pure luck, call it what you want. As I was writing the book, what I realized is that talking about how we make moral decisions is only half the battle. What might even be more important, again, this is like 15 years after 2008 when I start writing the book. What's more important is to try to demonstrate to people that there may be a culture war. I don't deny that. But if we get really foundational or fundamental, and we may get into this, Patty, we're going to discover that we are basically the same when it comes to morality. And every chapter basically begins with a concept of moral philosophy. But then the last third to the half of each chapter is called Are We So Divided? And what I attempt to demonstrate is whether you and I disagree about the morality of adultery, I have a chapter on that. The morality of promise keeping, I have a chapter on that. Whether we're woke or over woke, whether abortion's morally right or wrong, at the most fundamental level, we embrace the same principles. Final thing, and then I'll stop yakking.
No, no.
The final thing is the influencers, the politicians, the pundits, they make money, they get elected if you and I are enemies. If I don't trust you, if I don't think that you're a good person, if I think that your goal is to destroy this country, I'm going to work for a candidate and I'm going to donate a candidate. And even the worst thing, the thing that gets me most, I'm going to click. People are going to click on articles that the influencers write, and the ones that they're going to click on are the ones that talk about us being divided, rather than the ones that say that we actually are all just about decent people. Almost every one of us is, and we're decent people for the same reasons. And maybe we'll talk about some examples as we go on. So that's the long story of how this book evolved and finally was published.
That is beautiful. And again, we seem more polarized than ever, again, since your 2008 first idea of this. Um, so do you show us in the book how people can disagree without seeing each other as the enemy?
Yes. To me, the first thing on the path, as I said, is to understand how we think ethically. And then we discover that we do the same thing. But there's some other things I say throughout. I'll just give you a quick example.
Please.
Let's just look at something simple like I'm a Trump supporter, you're my next door neighbor, you're a Biden supporter, Harris supporter. We used to talk to each other in the front yard and that sort of thing. You have your sign out front, I have mine. And we're really not talking like we used to talk. And I might even say, gosh, ugh, my neighbor, she's voting for Harris, vice versa.
Right.
At the end of the day, if I knocked on your door and I said, Patty, I'm making a birthday cake for my daughter. I ran out of sugar and she really wants this cake tonight. You're going to give it to me no matter who I vote for.
Yeah.
If you knock on my door and you say, I need help driving a child to school, would you help me? I'm going to help you. If there's an auto accident in front of one of our houses and someone's hurt, both of us are going to call ambulances. Now, you might say that this is nothing, this is simple, but it begins to show that we actually share a set of moral commitments, compassion. Just about all of us believe compassion is a morally good character trait.
Yeah.
Honesty, just about all of us believe honesty is a morally good character trait. Loyalty, morally good character trait. Caring, morally good character trait. Callousness and hatefulness, not a morally good character trait. So this is just the beginning. The idea here is that regardless of who you vote for, regardless of what your political views are, when I start to think about that, I realize, they keep telling me that she's the enemy, but she's a decent person. That's the beginning.
And so, and then where do we go there? So we've shared our sugar and we both called the ambulance, but maybe, there's hateful or prejudiced speech and thoughts out there. What is the difference between shutting it down or engaging with responsibility, or do you just ignore the whole thing?
I mean, I have one of my chapters is what do I do if I hear hateful or harmful language? And as you said, and I think I said earlier, I don't tell anyone what to do, but I do talk about situations that I've been in and how they were resolved. I had a student who came up to me once and she said that she was married to a white supremacist. She was a white supremacist. Her parents were white supremacists. And she said she's starting to question these beliefs. In fact, it was getting to the point that she didn't want to sleep in the same bed with her husband.
Oh,
And basically, what I said to her was, do you want to talk about it? And if you want to talk about it, it's going to take a while. We're going to have to share some personal things about ourselves. And then basically, when she came to my office, we did talk about it. One of the questions that I asked her is, why are you so disturbed by this? And she started to tell me that she felt guilty. She felt ashamed. And one thing I said to her was, again, I used the book to teach about moral philosophy. Moral philosophers have a term, Patty, called moral luck. It's an interesting idea. Moral luck basically is the idea that we might be in situations where we judge somebody morally, but in reality, it was a function of luck. So imagine, Patty, that I was raised, let's say, in 1939 in Germany, and I'm anti Semitic. I throw stones through the windows of shopkeepers. You, meanwhile, are raised in the United States and you never do these things. Does that mean that, this is what I was saying to my student, does that mean that you are morally superior to me? And what do you think? How would you analyze that?
Right. Yeah, no, it's what we so about morality. Do you yeah, that's hard. No, because that's how you were raised. But do you think
Exactly. But let me tie it up.
okay.
That's luck. If you would have been born in Germany and I would have been born in the United States, you would have been the bad person. I would have been the good person. Another example, two people drive home after three drinks. Some kid runs out from the sidewalk in front of one of them and they get hit by a car. The other person drives home, parks in the lot and goes to sleep. If the kid would have ran in front of the other car, that other car would have hit them. But yet, you and I naturally, Patty, would probably say something like, gosh, I can't believe that person drove home drunk. They were such an idiot. They were such a fool. They ran someone over. And yet, there's all these people who didn't run someone over, and we don't judge them. And that the idea that I was trying to convey to my student was, maybe you ought not be so hard on yourself. Maybe part of the reason that you adopted these values is because of your environment, and maybe I would have too. This was the beginning of a conversation. And in the book, I talk about how keeping moral luck in mind, it's not the only thing. If we hear someone say something that is hateful, we might want to ask ourselves if we had been raised or if we were in the same situation, might we say the same thing? And again, I'm not going to give away the whole chapter. It would just take
Yeah.
so long. But at the end of the day, Patty, I basically say you're going to have to decide whether you believe it's worthwhile to maintain this relationship. You might say something like, I think if I hang out with this person, I'm going to lose my job and people are going to say that I'm also a bad person. Maybe then you shouldn't do it. You might, on the other hand, say, they, Scott seems like a good guy. Everything except those things he says. Maybe if we hang out together and we chat, I can even say to Scott, this is something I talk about in the book, given your values, which I think are great, it's surprising that you say this. And this is a way of talking to someone which doesn't put them on the defensive. And maybe then I will get enlightened and you might decide part of your path in this life is, in fact, to have that conversation with Scott Gelfand.
I love that. So we're looking at judgment about morality. So regarding morality, do you think it's inherent in us or is it something we have to learn?
Oh, good. I'm actually writing a book now on the history of ethics. That's why I'm
Ah,
smiling. There are theories which basically say human beings are constructed in such a way that when they see an action, and if I'm getting too much in the weeds, Patty, slow me down.
no, no, you're
But the
great.
claim
You're
is that
fine. You're good.
all humans, assuming that, like, humans have the capacity to see color, but there are some people who are colorblind and they don't have the capacity. But someone who has all of our human capacities, according to this theory, when we see people act out of concern for other human beings, we actually have a feeling inside of us that's called approval or approbation. It's a natural feeling that we have. And according to this theory, what makes an action morally right is that it flows from concern for other beings. So, according to this theory, it's naturally born into us. I'm not sure that this is the correct theory, but I am somewhat confident that another psychological claim is that human beings naturally want to be on the side of the good. We want to believe that we are good people. If this is natural, then I think we're going to have a natural drive to be moral. So what happens, Patty, is this afternoon I go into the grocery store and I put a Baby Ruth candy bar in my pocket. And when I go outside, I think to myself, it's not going to hurt anybody if I stole the candy bar. The grocery makes so much money. It costs them 35 cents. They sell it for $2. It won't hurt anybody. Notice now, I convinced myself I'm on the side of the good.
Ah,
And I
yeah.
think we do have a natural drive for this.
Interesting. That is fascinating. Um, and and yeah, we are going to have the disagreements because and I live in a world I work in this weird witchy spirituality world, which is religion. And what is the thing people completely it's politics and religion, the thing Mama always said you don't talk about in public. Of course, that's the world I went into. So you did mention in your book that you think that disagreements can actually strengthen relationships. How can you make it strengthen a relationship? Maybe just in the statement you just made or something.
Interestingly, the first chapter of this book was almost called Do Not Talk About Religion or Politics. And what I wanted to do was unpack this claim and try to figure out, why do we believe this? There must be an element of truth to it. And just at the end of the day, again, I know I'm speaking shorthand, but at the end of the day, this is advice that we give to ourselves or others because we fear that if we talk about religion or politics, it's going to harm our relationships with others.
Mhm.
So, if in fact we can have conversations that don't harm our relationship with others, then the advice disappears. The chapter was actually going to be don't discuss religion or politics. I was going to have a line across the word don't, crossing it out, and it was going to say, now is the time to talk about religion or politics. So, how does it develop relationships? I'm of the belief, and I'm not alone, that the way to develop friendships, especially to develop deeper relationships, is to be authentic with other people.
Mhm.
When my son was going to college, I said to him, Boaz, don't try to show off. He had some insecurities. I said, I wouldn't even hide my insecurities. And I'll bet you, if you are the person with people who you are when you're alone, going to sleep at night, thinking about it, you're going to have more friends than you know what to do with. If this is correct and I'm authentic with other people, one of the things that you can learn about me, Patty, that gives you the deepest understanding of who I am is, what are my moral and political viewpoints? If I say to you something like, I believe that we're overly politically correct, again, there's a chapter on that, but I tell you why. So, one of the arguments for overly politically correct is that people on the left, according to those who say it's overly politically correct, believe, I'm sorry, people on the right believe that people on the left are talking down to them. They're basically saying to them, get with it. It's 2025. You can't use the word homeless. You have to use the word unhoused. And I heard this podcast, and this person said, I had been voting for Democrats all my life, and the hardest thing was to tell my dad I was voting for Trump. But Trump makes me feel good about who I am, and Democrats make me feel bad about who I am.
Mm.
So I think that if so wait, my point on this political correctness thing, oh yeah, is that if we make people think or suggest that people are bad because of who they are, it is going to harm relationships. But on the other hand, if we go into it with the idea that I know you're a decent person, and again, I haven't given you all the arguments for that, and you know that I'm a decent person, and I say to you, Patty, I think political correctness has gone too far. I always feel bad about who I am. I don't know what to say. Things are changing so fast. Even if you are pro political correctness, you're going to be thinking, poor Scott, life must be tough for him. And that's the empathy that comes out of these sorts of honest conversations. And then you might say to me, I know you feel really bad about that, Scott, but look, in the history of the United States, we've used racial slurs to refer to people. And I still know people who use those, and it hurts them so badly. Now, I might respond to you, That's really a good point. I certainly don't want to hurt anybody, but I feel like I can't live in this world. They keep correcting me. Notice now, I don't know what's right. Maybe we have too much political correctness, maybe we don't. And I actually believe that if we get to that point, maybe that's where we should be for most issues. We should be confused. And you should and that's and at that point in time, I think we're going to connect with each other more deeply because I'm sharing with you who I am and you're sharing with me who you are, and crucially we're not pouncing on each other.
Yeah, I like, and again, what you said, the authenticity of it. I don't know. Every day I feel different or this or that about things. So, this just flashed up as as a philosophical counselor, which I love. Since so many say, how would you guide someone struggling a moral dilemma involving, I mean, almost everything involving family, where maybe love, obligation, and truth are colliding? We're talking
Yeah, good. You
family
you put it
relationship.
well. I can see your grandfather in you. Yeah, philosophical counseling at first, it's an idea. It's not psychotherapy. It's the idea that when people are experiencing challenges or problems in their life, if we examine their beliefs, if we examine their values, frequently clarity emerges from this. Instead of diagnosing disorders, what we want to do is reduce confusion and help them make choices that align with their values. Um, so the first thing that we do typically when we're working with, or that philosophical counselors do, or what I do, is try to do a deep exploration of a person's own values to try to get both me and them to understand their values. Frequently, Patty, what we discover is that we hold values that can't be reconciled with each other. We hold values that conflict with each other. And if we hold values that conflict with each other, it's going to cause anxiety because we cannot do the right thing. I remember I was working with somebody and she was a nurse and she was taking care of her elderly mother. And she said, I believe, Scott, that I have the right to focus on my own well being, to try to have enjoyable experiences and hang out with my friends. And then later she said something like, I think family is the most important thing. And because my mom needs my help, of course, I drop everything to help my mother. Well, notice that in this case, she is embracing two values that conflict with each other. And either she's going to do things that she believes she has a right to do, but then she's going to fail her obligations to her mother, or she's going to do everything for her mother, but she's not going to have the free time or believe she has the freedom to focus on her own life. And she's going to resent her mother at this point in time. Now, once we start to uncover this, it depends the direction of the conversation, but we might talk about what important philosophers have said about what happens with values conflict. For example, there's one school of philosophy that says, in a case like this, one of these two values actually trumps the other value. And we can't know with absolute certainty which value trumps. But once we figure out which value trumps, the other obligation disappears. I'm willing to talk about that. My thought, however, Patty, is that it's different. And I would share this with them. I would actually say that it's amazing, it's beautiful that human beings have the capacity to experience moral confusion, that human beings have the capacity to feel guilty, that human beings have the capacity to talk about this situation that I just told you 5 years later and not know what the right thing is. Not because there's no right thing. I'm not saying because there's no right thing. In the book, what I say is morality sometimes is ultimately complex, but not complex like mathematics, not complex like physics. Rather, it's complex in that we are holding a variety of beliefs which push us in different directions, which can't be reconciled. We're not sure we're doing the right thing, and yet we have to act. This is difficult. This is challenging. I would say again, it's beautiful. And I'm
I,
oftentimes hope that people I work with come to discover that living a moral life, struggling, trying to live a moral life, struggling to think my job has become meaningless to me, but I have to make money for my family, but I want to go back to school and do something that I like. It's a huge struggle, but isn't it beautiful?
Yeah.
My cat doesn't do that. I don't, certainly I think about AI a lot. And people have these conversations with AI chatbots. AI isn't going to experience this because
Yeah.
AI isn't human. And maybe that's one of the reasons we should talk to human beings as opposed to computers,
Yeah.
because they can empathize with what I just explained.
I love that. So, okay, so I live in this world of spirituality world. So, in many spiritual traditions, they say our actions, like we're talking about this stuff, affect our energy or our karma or our soul. Do you see ethics as a part of our inner well-being or not just our behavior?
I'm thinking it does. I mean, are you asking me, do I believe that someone who acts ethically has increased well-being as compared to someone who acts unethically?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to believe that's the case. That's like the holy grail in ethics. The ancient Greeks came up with a term, it's called eudaimonia. And eudaimonia is a term which essentially says if you are virtuous, you live a good life, flourish. And if you aren't ethical, you don't live a good life and don't flourish. Um, in Plato's Republic, the challenge to Socrates, Socrates is the main character in this dialogue. And one of the people Socrates is talking to says, imagine that there's a just person, a morally good person. Everybody thinks they're immoral. They can't marry. They can't get a good job. And eventually they are impaled because they're immoral. But in reality, they're moral, but no one knows that. Compare that person to someone who is immoral, but has the reputation for morality. And that person marries well, has a good job, and has a family, and all the good things that come with that. And Socrates' job is to prove that the first person has a better life than the second person.
Mm.
And the whole book is devoted to that. And Socrates thinks that he succeeds. I'm not, I don't know. I guess I'm open on that. But one thing I will say, I do believe that almost all of us, when we put our heads down on the pillow, think about the day. And I do think that when I lay my head on the pillow sometimes, happens. And I say, that person really took advantage of me. But you know what? I don't have to lose sleep because of that. They do. So, in that sense, I think it might actually contribute to our own well being.
Okay.
That said, I think that ethics has to be outward looking as well. Here's what I'd like to say about it, Patty. Wouldn't it be nice, and maybe this is it? Ethics is about us interacting with other people. Most of us have a natural desire, I think, to be somewhat selfish. And some selfishness is okay, but
Mhm.
maybe to be overly selfish. Most of us have this temptation. And ethics maybe keeps that in check to some extent. Now, wouldn't it be beautiful if I want to keep that in check? But again, so the focus is I'm keeping my selfishness in check. Why? To help other people. I'm acting out of empathy. But as a result of that, my life is better. My goal isn't to make my life better, but rather that's icing on the cake that actually comes with acting ethically. I would love it if that is the case.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that.
And I'm
So,
not convinced it's not. I mean, am I allowed to ask you
sure.
in your spiritual world,
Yeah.
isn't there some idea that we're connected with others and
Yeah.
therefore if we contribute to their well-being,
Yes.
even
And
if it's
it's
not our aim, our well-being is increased as well?
yes, whatever, it's the law of three in witchcraft. What you put out, you get back. Cause and effect, action and reaction. Yes, we do
Yeah.
believe that. The karmic, which is more Eastern
Yeah.
philosophy, believe in say, yes, we do. Yeah, and whether it looks on the outside that the guy's got everything and the fancy cars and houses is the ill, but yeah, I do believe that in the big picture of things. What's in the heart.
And something that I actually mentioned to you prior to coming on this podcast, if you have different orientations that converge on the same idea. So, in other words, if different religions basically talk about care for other human beings, different spiritual orientations, care for other human beings, I would start to say, there's a good chance that we're getting this right.
Yeah.
Furthermore, if there's this idea of karma, the idea of karma, even though I know it's somewhat misunderstood, is pervasive in our culture. You used a word that was different from karma, but I imagine it approximates karma. The thing that I said approximates karma. Well, maybe if all of these different orientations lead to the same place, maybe we're all onto something.
Right. Just a different template or a different wording or a different, I look at things as a template, a different outfit, a different outfit. Somebody needs comfortable in this outfit and somebody's comfortable in that. You need to be academic, you need to be Judeo-Christian, you need to be, don't want a title of what is. So that's what I think.
Yeah.
I,
Or, another way of putting it is I'm in Chicago right now, and let's just say you're in New Jersey and we both want to go to North Carolina. We're going to have completely different paths, but no, we're leading to the same place.
yes. Oh,
So
I
there might
love
be
that.
something to that.
I may borrow that. I love that. Anyway, I could talk for 3 hours, but we can't talk for 3 hours. So let's get back to your book for a second.
Good.
You guys got to check this out. It is amazing. Bestseller, brand new out. So before I get to where people can find you and all that, one more thing. If readers walk away with one, I'm not going to say change behavior, but a changed perception on something, what do you hope it will be?
It's probably what I have in the last chapter. The last chapter is entitled something like, "What sort of person do you want to be?" And I talk about, in philosophy especially, there's a history of using role models to help us figure out what's the morally right thing to do. In other words, I know that I might not be the most caring human being, but some people say, what would Jesus do? With the idea that I don't have that character, but maybe thinking through that person or my conception of that person, that I can figure out what to do. And someone else might say, what would Gandhi do? And the
Right.
thing that I want to point out there is that many of us at this point in time might be tempted to look at our political figures as our moral exemplars.
Mm.
And on both sides, on all the sides. And what I would like to suggest is we don't know them at all. Do I know what Harris, how Harris treated old school friends when she ran into them, or how Biden acted on the train if someone fell down behind him? I have no idea how he acted. I might have believed he was a good president, but those are different character traits from the traits that I think are important for us to be. Again, in the book, I keep talking about empathic, caring human beings. Same thing with Donald Trump. You might think that Donald Trump is a great president, but at the end of the day, that's different from being a morally good person. So what I would say is that even if we support people politically, when it comes to our moral life, when it comes to our life where we're interacting with friends and strangers throughout the day, maybe we shouldn't try to emulate them. Maybe we should err on the side of giving people some grace, giving people benefit of the doubt. And I can go to sleep at night and say, I gave that person the benefit of the doubt and I turned around and they took my briefcase.
Yeah.
Well, they did. But you know what? I'm living up to my ideals. I'm not looking at this person as a potential enemy or anything like that. And I think that's a step towards happiness. Again, back to what you said, and maybe living the sort of life that we can be proud of.
Yeah, that's good. So yeah, see, I find it hard if believe in somebody as a political leader, if I don't think they're a moral or ethical person, I cannot not make the crossover. So
Uh,
for
Can
yeah,
I add one more thing? You can cut this if you want.
yeah,
I've been telling people lately, don't focus so much on the issues. Number one, I don't know what the best healthcare plan would be for the United States. We have people who literally spend their whole life designing different healthcare plans, and they disagree with each other. We have people spending their whole life on economics, and they disagree about whether or not tariffs are going to cause inflation. But what I can do is look at the character of the person I'm voting for, especially, Patty, how do they make decisions? Do they make decisions by intimidating people? Do they make decisions by making people feel too comfortable? Do they listen to people? Do they make snap decisions? And maybe at the end of the day, you may make a decision that I disagree with, Patty, but I know that you went through the right process making a decision. And given that I don't really know what's the best policy, maybe that's the best I can do. And I could look at my kids and say, see that, Patty? I would kind of be happy if you grew up with her character traits. I remember doing that as, I don't think I said it to my kids, but I definitely did to my wife. Stuff like, gosh, I hope that my kids could grow up to be that sort of human being.
I like that. That's beautiful. Thank you. All right,
You're
very last
welcome.
question, and then I'm going to have people tell where they
Okay.
can find you and your book. So, for listeners, again, might be overwhelmed by all of this or do the right thing. Do you have a simple ethical rule to start with today?
I think I might, but it might be too complicated. I'm not sure. This is
Okay.
actually like the rule that I write in philosophy articles. So it's not, I mean, so this is sophisticated, but a rule that I believe in is actions that flow from care, love for others are generally morally right. And what this means is you and I could perform the exact same action. You could donate to charity 50 bucks. I do the same. Someone says to me, why did you donate to charity? And I say, oh, because I know that when my wife hears that I donated to charity, it'll really piss her off. And we got in a fight last night, so I donated our money. And you say, because I truly think that this is going to help other people. Now, notice we performed the exact same action. We reached into our wallet, we pulled out $50, and we dropped it in the bucket.
Yeah.
But yet we believe, I think most listeners would agree, we believe there's something distinctly different about this. And what it is our motives. And what I would say is that maybe what we want to do, what I want to do, I don't know what you want to do. I offer lots of different ways to think and act morally in the book, just so you know. But for me, I think this is consistent with almost every religious tradition. You could tell me if it's consistent with the traditions that you usually talk about on this show. I think the idea would be if we just go through life thinking there's another human being, they can suffer just like I can. I'm not going to give them all my money and live on the street, but if I could help somebody because I don't want them to experience pain, that's beautiful. And that might be the gist of morality.
I agree 100%. Thank you.
Even
I
so, do
agree.
your traditions
Yeah,
basically?
completely. So tell everybody who may want to follow you now, work with you now as a counselor, get your book. Where can people find you? Where can they get your book, your social media, your website? Let us know.
Yes. So basically, my website for philosophical counseling is my first and last name.com, scottgelfand.com. It's pretty straightforward. Um, I've just started social media, Patty, and I should be putting some reels up within the next 24 to 48 hours. It was something that I kind of stayed away from. And when I wrote the book, I think what I thought was, I'm writing the book, it's up to the publisher to get it sold. But then I thought to myself, I've worked on this for 2 years. I really believe in this. I think our country can improve and our own lives can improve. So I actually got the lights the other day to make good reels, and those will be on Instagram 24 to 48 hours. But if you just go to scottgelfand.com, phone numbers there, emails there. I answer all emails, I answer phone calls, and I would love to chat.
Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing your magic to the witching hour.
Thank you. So this was an absolute pleasure, by the way. You really let me just yak all day, and it was an
Yeah.
absolute pleasure.
Uh,
And I
uh,
could tell you were getting it. So thank you so much, Patty.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for listening, watching, all of the above. Get this book.